Baylor football is a home underdog against a team that didn't even make a bowl game last year. How does that work? Let's get locked on Baylor.
You are Locked On Baylor, your daily podcast on the Baylor Bears. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello there, Bears fans. Welcome to another episode of Locked On Baylor, brought to you by FanDuel, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. I'm your host, Cam Stewart of ESPN Central Texas and the Cam Show on Rogue Media Sports Network. We appreciate you making it your first listen today and every day. And as we look towards the future of Baylor football, today we're going to look at the game that there's somehow an underdog in and how that could possibly be the case. Plus, it was a big weekend for Baylor football recruiting that you'll start to see trickle in the next couple of weeks. Why Dave Aranda is going head-to-head with the Texas Longhorns for some of these 4 and 5 stars. No, really. You'll want to stick around for that. Plus, recapping the basketball weekend, tough day for the Lady Bears. Nice win for the men's team. But is Utah so bad we can't be impressed by it? All that and more coming up on this episode of Locked On Baylor. I need your guys' help here, okay? Lord knows I'm no mathematician. I was no math major. In fact, my major maybe even shouldn't even be a major. I'm not a math whiz. I'm not. But somehow a team that did not make a bowl game last year and has not had a winning season since COVID, we were getting COVID numbers on the news every day. Somehow that team is going into another Power 4 team stadium and is a favorite against said Power 4 team that won 8 games last year. Because somehow Auburn opens up at a 1.5 favorites against Baylor, which is week 1 of the 2025 football season. Like the last time they played was a regular season game. And they dropped their record to 5-7. And here's Baylor, which is one of the stories of college football in the back half of the season, if you're paying attention, and win 6 straight games and get to that 8-win plateau. And yeah, they didn't have a great bowl game. Of course, we could go over that. But how is that team, with bringing so many key guys back, how is that team a dog at home against Auburn? See, this is what I don't understand. This is where we get way too caught up in the hype of things. I know preseason top 25s don't matter a ton because of what we're about to go over right here. But I don't understand. It's like that quarterback that goes into the draft who isn't on the first round boards or second round boards when they're playing football games. And then they do all the measurable stuff and all of a sudden he's a first round pick. Looking at you, Zach Wilson. But there are plenty of guys that you could look at the history of the NFL draft. This is what it's like with this opening line, with Auburn being a 1.5 favorites. What? Because they have SEC on the patch? Seriously? That's what gets them there? Auburn's had a pretty damn good transfer portal class. Sure. Tech has one of those every year. Look where it gets them. You know, and suddenly this good, you know, probably top 10 portal class that they brought in is like that. This propels them into the stratosphere. Because what also amazes me is in some of these way too early top 25 rankings, Baylor's finding a spot, you know, between, 18 and 25. And Auburn's not. They're finding votes, but they're not finding a spot in the top 25. So if Baylor has a better record this past year, the last time they played football, and more experts are projecting them to be a top 25 team in America, then and they're playing at home, then how are they an underdog? I don't get it. Like, again, Auburn, good transfer portal class, but this is a team that has not had a winning record since 2020, and they're rolling out Jackson Arnold at quarterback. A guy who doesn't know how to have winning records. You know what I mean? Like they just went 6-7 at OU. They forced Dylan Gabriel out the door, Heisman finalist, to bring this kid in. And all of a sudden he's going to be the one that leads them over the top week 1. I'm perplexed by it. That's all. Like, the last time that Auburn had as many wins in a season as Baylor just had this past year, I had a full head of hair. I didn't have a solar panel up here. I didn't have to wear a hat every time I came on the pod. I was a freshly minted college graduate the last time that happened. That's how long it's been. We were preparing for Sugar Bowl I the last time that happened. Matt Rule was Baylor's head coach. And that was the last time that Auburn had as many as 8 wins in a season. And yet they got some good signatures in the transfer portal. They bring in Jackson Arnold, Gatorade Player of the Year, Denton Geyer, right? Not Ryan, Denton Geyer. And all of a sudden, they're ready to go. This is the team for Auburn. They're really going to improve off those 5 wins last year. Maybe I'm not doing the math right. Maybe I'm missing something here. Or maybe, just maybe, this is the SEC bias in its most effective case, let's say. This is where you see SEC bias the most out of anything, because there's nothing in terms of what you saw on the field this past year, what players are coming back from either team, which coaches are coming back from either team. There's none of that would say, yeah, Auburn's going to be a better team than Baylor. In fact, they're going to go into Baylor's house and they're going to beat them in week 1. But yet here we are. Vegas has given them 1.5. The math ain't mathin' for me. I don't know. I'm missing it. The Athletic has Baylor in the top 20 in the way too early. They've got them at number 19, actually, which is about it's the highest that I've seen from like an outlet that's not a blog, which nothing against blogs. I'm the guy doing a podcast, but you know what I mean. And so this is the write-up. From the depths of a 2-4 start, Baylor won 6 straight to close out the regular season before falling to LSU in the Texas Bowl. Offense exploded over the last 2 months, led by Sawyer Robertson, who threw for 445 in the bowl game, and many of the key pieces will be back. But the defense, which ranked 10th in the Big 12 in yards per play in conference games, will need to improve if Baylor hopes to make a run at a playoff berth. And of course, they do list key transfers here, and a couple of them are on the defensive side. Travion Barnes and Devin Turner, to name the ones they had on here. Of course, we know about Phoenix Jackson as well, and some shakeup in the coaching staff on the defensive side, bringing in Calvin Simpson-Hunt from Ohio State. I think that's a pretty big get the other day. We'll see how much he's in terms of early season. And yet, Auburn's getting 1.5. Auburn, who's not ranked in the top 25 in the Athletics way too early. And you check all of the way too earlys, man. If they're not coming from Paul Feinbaum, like they're not having Auburn in the top 25. And Zach Blackerby, who runs the Locked On Auburn podcast, friend of the show, put it out the stat of the day the other day that Auburn was the 1.5 favorites, and saying, how much do you think they should be favored by? And I do have to give Auburn fans some credit here. There are some sprinkled in that said, we'll beat them by 2 touchdowns. But they're probably the most level-headed SEC Twitter fan base I've ever seen, which is saying a lot, because a lot of them were like, should we be favorites? I don't know. And I saw that with the Walker White episode as well. Some people in the comments that could get a little nasty, but for the most part, it was Auburn fans saying, damn, we wish he wasn't leaving. And so remember that come August 30th or 31st, whatever it is, when you see those Auburn Tigers at McLean Stadium. But why they're the favorites over Baylor, it beats the hell out of me. I'll say that. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Am I getting this wrong? Is it just the patch that they wear that says what conference they're in? And why, if they're just so much better because of the transfer portal, is that just going to click day one? How much do they disrespect Baylor? Which is something we'll be talking about later on throughout this week. Let me know in the comments below. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel. It helps out a lot. Locked On Baylor rolls on, though. We will be talking about the big recruiting weekend that Dave Aranda had. That's coming up next on your favorite program. There we go. Locked On Baylor. First, this message is brought to you by the good people at TurboTax. And once again, told through me. Taxes was waiting and wondering and worrying if you were going to get any money back. And then waiting, wondering, and worrying some more. That was tax season. Well, now taxes is matching with a TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. An expert who gives you your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on your day and listening to Locked On Baylor. An expert will find you every deduction possible, file every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy. All so you can get the most money back guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now this is taxes. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live Full Service. Real-time updates only in iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. Big weekend for Baylor football, which doesn't usually happen at the end of January, but in this case, Junior Day, a big-time success for this Baylor football program. And it was a success before anyone even walked in the door. Okay, because this lineup that they had at their Junior Day Sunday at McLean Stadium is off the charts good, especially for Baylor, especially for a program that's still building to get back to that standard. I think we'd all agree on that. This was a really awesome 8-5 season. The way it started out at 2-4 to be 8-5 at the end of it, yeah, it's pretty fun. It's pretty impressive. I know other fans will laugh at that, but this is truly just the beginning for Baylor football. And the 2025 turnaround they had for recruiting, the class of 2025 cannot be understated. And it kind of started at this event last year. In fact, Bears Illustrated 247, they pointed out that, this was a case last year where there were 8 uncommitted guys who were 3 stars or higher that came to this Junior Day event a year ago that signed on with the class of 2025. Like, that's a pretty good return, man. And Will Turboff, who writes those articles and follows this, boots on the ground, our Baylor recruiting expert, friend of the show, was on the Matt Mosley show, ESPN Central Texas, on Friday, and was talking about this event and who was coming to it. And one of the big takeaways that he had from it, from talking to guys, and one of the big takeaways I had from his talk with Mosley, is he said, there's a couple of these guys, a couple of these 4 stars that I've talked to, and it's coming down to Baylor and Texas. Really? Because I had a flood of comments in my videos the past few weeks about how much better Texas is than Baylor and how it's even crazy to think that Baylor could have a comparable year to the Texas Longhorns next year. But this is stunning news. By the way, Texas is going to be very good next year. That's not what I was saying there. But Baylor could well be the second or first best team in Texas next year if the Longhorns slip up a little bit. I think Baylor has that kind of potential to be in the top 2. I really do. And now you hear about the future of this. And look, I'm not naive. Steve Sarkisian will get his fair share of blue chip recruits. But when you're talking about a couple of 4-star guys within the state of Texas that both Baylor and Texas are pushing hard for, and that it's 50-50, a toss-up between those 2 schools, that's already a win for Baylor. That's already raised the standard of where they were last year, the year before, and the year before that. No disrespect to anyone who came in those recruiting classes in 22, 23, 24. But you saw the results on the field in terms of what Baylor was doing. It was not good enough. And that's why they went out and they got Keenan Hall. And this is paying instant dividends because Mosley, he asks Will in that interview, why is Baylor all of a sudden winning in their backyard? Because that was a problem they had for so long in the early years of Dave Aranda. And he said, Keenan Hall is a huge reason why. They all cite Keenan Hall. And a lot of the players that he talks to are saying not just Keenan Hall, but like 4 or 5 or 6 names. That means Dave Aranda is deploying the entire militia around Texas. And so whenever you hear these guys who say, the relationships were the big reason why, it's because they're not just getting a position coach out there like a lot of programs are going to do, but rather, again, 4 or 5 or 6 guys that are in contact with them, that are going to their school, that's going to their games, their practices. That's how Baylor is winning here. That's kind of the secret sauce. Every team is trying to build relationships. No team is trying to look like con artists. But Baylor's the one that's doing it the best. And that's what has started this significant momentum that started with the class of 2025 and really started with this junior day last year. But how about a dozen 4-star recruits coming in, 4-star or higher, a dozen of them. And they're names that you know, right? Quinn Murphy, we talked about at the end of last week, the 4-star 2026 quarterback out of Argyle Liberty Christian. He's playing for Jason Witten. Jason Witten's son, Cooper, the number 2 ranked safety in America in his class. He was there as well on Sunday. And some of these local guys, I know for you Baylor fans, this is like, finally, man, finally, these local blue chip prospects. We talk about Micah Hudson as this pipe dream through the transfer portal. And really, Baylor should have been at the table when he was in high school, man. He was going to school 40 minutes from Baylor's campus. And yet they're not getting in on any of these guys. Kobe Black, one of the top defensive backs in America in his class of 2023, I want to say. Maybe it's 24. Coming from 24. Waco Conley, UT, and there was no thought of Baylor, none. And now you're looking at some of these 4-stars. Jamarion Carlton, defensive lineman from Temple High. He's one of the ones that Turboff said it's probably going to be between Texas and Baylor. Jordan Clay, wide receiver, San Antonio. So he actually even more Longhorn country. He said that's the one that's coming down to those two-horse race. Texas and Baylor. Jordan Clay, 4-star receiver, top 50 recruit in the nation. And Carlton, by the way, top 5 defensive lineman in America as a 4-star guy. And how about another one thrown in there? Ahmad Hudson. Junior day is deceiving. He's a sophomore, just coming out of the sophomore season, class of 2027. The number 1 tight end in the class of 2027. Number 1. There's only one Ahmad Hudson. 6'6", 230. You cannot teach that. 6'6", 230 as a sophomore. The kid comes down with everything. Everything. Number 10 recruit in the nation in his class. Number 1 at his position. And Baylor's on him early. Baylor, Florida, LSU. Going to Baylor's junior day. And by the way, there were some good schools that had junior day on Sunday. Oklahoma had it. A couple of Big Ten teams had it. Oregon, which we've seen recruit in Texas very well. And here they are. They're coming to Baylor. London Smith. You want to talk about recruiting the backyard. This is one that Baylor really can't fumble. They've been on London Smith from his freshman year. Okay, University High, another one that's coming down to Baylor and UT. His dad played at Baylor. His mom was a national champion track and field athlete at Baylor. He's playing right in their backyard. Dave Aranda goes to his basketball games. This is one that would be an enormous fumble. And we know that Baylor's fumbled from University High before. Some of those guys who wanted to play at Baylor and are studs at University High, they go up the road to TCU and they wear gold jackets in Canton, Ohio. So don't fumble this one. But as Will once again pointed out in this interview, which is going to sound like a loser mentality for Baylor fans, I promise you it's not. The fact that they're even in the running with Texas and Florida, the way they're recruiting the last few years, and LSU and schools like this, that's a win. A&M throwing that mix too. They're not getting the recruits they used to. But if you're going to recruit the best players in Texas, like you need to put your cojones on the table a little bit. And the fact that Baylor, from 3-9 in 2023, is already going head-to-head with Steve Sarkisian, who's made the playoff the last 2 years in the state of Texas, that's massive. And by the way, there are going to be some that are picking Baylor over UT. For sure. For sure. And, London Smith is the real local one, but also Jordan Clay, Jamarion Carlton. Remember these names, man. Jamarion Vincent, by the way, You can watch him locally in Waco. Another Conley kid, 4-star guy, plays quarterback for them. Big, tall, lean. Looks like Cam Newton running out there. Probably going to be a corner or safety in college. That's what he's projecting at right now. And he's projecting as one of the best corners in the state of Texas, if not America. One of the best in Texas, therefore one of the best in America. Start keeping an eye on this. We saw this momentum pick up big time with 2025, and now they're setting the bar even higher. Keenan Hall, Aaron Hunt, all these guys, all these positional coaches going out there. This has been a total team effort from Baylor and Dave Aranda's staff. And man, it's exciting to see what is going to happen with this class of 2026. You saw a little bit of it today, Sunday. You started to see the beginning of it, but it's only going to grow. And honestly, guys, the way I'm looking at it right now, and this is with even you just had a decommitment from Davis Penn from South Lake Carroll at running back. But just through the first couple of commitments of this class and the living rooms that they're in for this class, this is going to be the best recruiting class Baylor's had in a long time. Maybe even back to the Bryles days. Truly. So keep an eye out for that. And let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. Is this just the beginning for Baylor's recruiting and therefore Baylor continuing to improve the standard on the field? Let me know in the comments below. Can they even battle with UT? Tell me how stupid I am. Be sure to like and subscribe. Helps out the channel a ton. And then you can find us wherever you find your podcasts if you're not listening already. Locked On Baylor rolls on. We're going to talk about the basketball recap from the weekend and a pretty important basketball weekend that's coming up. That's next on Locked On Baylor. But first, today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Super Bowl 59 is here, baby. One game, two teams, endless possibilities. And there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, even betting on the coin toss. You guys know this is the best betting day of the year. FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action. With live betting all game long, you can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to final whistle. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Bet just $5, and if you win, when you win, you bunch of winners, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, official partner of Super Bowl 59. A little bit of good, a little bit of bad for Baylor basketball over the weekend. Obviously, a lot of you were plugged in yesterday up at the Schollmeyer Arena, I think is how you say it, in Fort Worth. TCU women beat Baylor for the first time since the fall of the Soviet Union. First time since 1990. They knock off the team formerly known as the Lady Bears. Doesn't do a lot for me. They got a lot of catching up to do. TCU's got a good team this year. And I thought Baylor played pretty well for most of that game. They fell behind, obviously, in the first half, 14, 15 points, whatever it was. And they really fought back after that. And I thought they had their chances to win the game. If you had asked me in October, is this where I would have saw the women's team at this point in the season? I'd probably say no. No, I expected them to be a little better. But there's I think, good habits from this team and good personnel from this team, which is something that we've really kind of struggled to come to grips with the men's team, right? Do they have the right personnel? Do they have the right play style? And it's back-to-back wins for the Bears, both games that they were favored in, should have won. And now they take on BYU tomorrow night in Provo. We'll talk a little bit more about that on tomorrow's episode. But they've really found, and it took a while, but they found the VJ Edgecombe experience, truly. Not just oh, wow, he had one highlight reel dunk in this game, but rather what VJ could do to carry a team. And in the evening edition of Locked On Baylor today, we're going to break down a little bit more about VJ Edgecombe's game and how this hype is starting to kind of come to fruition. But I liked the way Baylor played on Saturday. I don't like when Scott Drew uses the excuse for every loss of like, just another night in the Big 12, because I just don't like that. And I know a lot of fans don't like that either. But this on Saturday against Utah, That felt like another day in the Big 12. And it was a game that they won by double digits, right? It felt like another day in the Big 12 because I thought they were playing excellent defense and they're a much better team than Utah. And yet, at halftime, you're like, oof, 2-possession game here? Really? They're only up 6 or whatever it was. And then like 10 minutes left, you're like, ugh, they're still kind of in this thing, 7 or 8 points. They're still in this thing. And then they win it by 15 on the road. That's what another day in the Big 12 should be like. Right? Like that's where this conference and how good it is, that's where it comes to fruition. Right? They had a decent atmosphere out there in SLC, which they usually don't, on Saturday. And they had a team that was playing very hard, and they did enough to keep them in the game. But Baylor had more talent, and Baylor outworked them. And so they won by 15 points. That's what another day in the Big 12 should be like. Not blowing a 12, 14-point lead to a mediocre TCU team at home. That's not just another day in the Big 12. This on Saturday against Utah, that is. And the Bears are done with the Utes this season, unfortunately. Plus 40 on the year in the 2 wins against them. And our pal Miro had a good game. Like, I'm not rooting for him to beat Baylor ever, but you kind of got the best of both worlds. He had a nice game, much better than the first time that he played his old team this year, because he actually scored in this game. That was a rough outing for him on New Year's Eve. In fact, he had a really good stat line. In 27 minutes, he goes 12 points, 8 rebounds, 7 assists. You kidding me? 12, 7, and 8. Good for him, man. But once again, another really nice game offensively from VJ Edgecombe. 21 points to go along with 6 rebounds. Another double-double for Norchad Omier. He looked healthier again, 22 and 12. Stop throwing bounce passes to Josh if we could. I thought Rob Wright was okay. He gets 14. I don't think he was at his best facilitating. And I like Jason Asamoah's defense again. I really do. The numbers, the box score numbers are going to come. I wish he was playing more than 9 minutes. The box score numbers are going to come with him. I liked how active he was on the defensive end, and you win the game by 15. Now you've got BYU. That's another game you should win. We're going to talk about that matchup. We're going to talk about Yegor Denham. I think is how you say it. Demon, not Denham, right? Oh God, it's going to be a week. And if Baylor could overcome that scheduled loss, because it was a scheduled loss last year, and the way this last week was going, it's like, oh boy, here we go. They're going to use that excuse of, hey, it's a tough environment and it's altitude and whatever. But they didn't against Utah, and they ran away with it. Let me know what you guys thought about that game over the weekend, what you think about this BYU game Tuesday night. Drop that down in the comments below. Pretty simple. If you like the video on YouTube. It certainly helps. If you watched it on YouTube, could you throw us a like? It helps out the channel a ton. Comment whatever you want down in the comment section below. If you love it, if you hate it, if you're totally indifferent, or you have a favorite Harry Potter movie you just want to tell me about, put that down in the comments below. And if you're on the go, find us wherever you get your podcasts. That actually helps out the channel and me even more if you're listening wherever you get your podcasts. That helps out a ton. We do audio every day as well. Thank you for making it your first listen today and every day. Really appreciate that. We will see you a little bit later on this afternoon, talking a little bit of VJ Edgecombe on your favorite show, Locked On Baylor.